Today on the Big 3 in 30, Duke and Michigan meet in Washington, D.C. Saturday.
1 versus 3 in a top 3 matchup here. This is incredible.
Houston faces off against Arizona in another top 4 matchup.
There's like several of these guys. I think 4 of these guys make your big board here.
And BYU hopes to get a big win over Iowa State.
The Cyclones come to town, and BYU is getting short on remaining opportunities.
This is the Big 3 in 30 College, the 3 biggest stories on campus from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 College starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. This weekend will be one of the best in regular season college basketball history, with all of the top 4 teams playing each other Saturday. One of those matchups pits number 1 Michigan against number 3 Duke, and JJ Jackson previews the game on Locked On Blue Devils.
Brendan, man, we're excited to see this game unfold. I know that when it was announced, it's like, man, this is going to be a really cool opportunity. We didn't really know it'd be 1 versus 3 in a top 3 matchup here. This is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly spoiled to have this game, and to have Houston and Arizona on the same day. It's going to be just an absolute showcase for college basketball. It's going to be for the best teams in the country. Obviously, the fact that College Game Day is going to a neutral site, you almost never see that. So I can't wait. I'll be there in person. It should be as good a game as there is this entire season.
Yeah, and I mean, well-traveled fan bases. Duke basketball has fans turn up anywhere, and it feels like you can walk into a grocery store anywhere in America, and you're going to find a Michigan alum or someone supporting the Blue. So I think the environment within the game itself, like you said, is going to just be peak college basketball.
Oh my God, it's going to be amazing. And you're right. Both fan bases travel. The fact that this game is going to be in DC, the fact that it's going to have huge attendance. Again, it's exactly what you want when you're putting these kinds of games together. It's what John Shire did last year, obviously, with Illinois in the Garden. That game obviously didn't quite pan out to be a tremendous game. I mean, it was great for Duke.
Yeah.
This one I'm expecting to be much more competitive, but it should be, it should engender just as much attention and the spotlight of college basketball will be in Washington, D.C. on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, a 43-point victory that Duke had over Illinois. Likely not in the cards for a game like this, but we'll see how competitive it is. And a game in which I think it could get up and down a good bit for sure. Duke most recently had an absolute beatdown over Syracuse on Monday night, which we'll get to in just a moment. But I mean, kind of the big matchups, the first things that come to mind when you look at a game like this, what is it?
Yeah, I think it's strength against strength. Duke this year has been a top 5 2-point offense all year. No surprise. They have Cameron Boozer, who is, would be my pick for the Wooden Award today. He's been the front runner of the entire season. He's been everything and more for Duke. We don't really need to dive too deep into that. But Michigan, on the other hand, has been a top 3 2-point defense all year. And obviously Dusty May has, a team, one of the few teams in the country that has the size to really go up and compete with Duke. Sure. Obviously going 6'9", Yaxel Lendenborg on the wing with the jumbo size lineups there. Adai Mara, 7'2", 7'3" in the paint. That's real length. That's real size that not many teams have to compete with Duke. And so it'll be fascinating to see who gets the better edge in that matchup between Cameron Boozer and some of Michigan's forwards. That I think as much as anything is what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, just the size of it all. These, as you said, are 2 of the tallest teams in all of America, and Duke does so much of their offense from the interior. In that regard, you'd feel like maybe there's a little bit more pressure on the outside shooting if it's going to be more difficult to make an impact on the inside. But I say all that and go back to what we saw just a few weeks ago in the Dean Dome when it's 2 massive teams once again in Duke and North Carolina, and both teams still had points throughout the game where they were able to get offense from inside that paint.
Yeah, and look, Cameron Boozer is not a guy that, and you bring up that Dean Dome game against Carolina. In the first half, Cameron Boozer was relatively quiet. And then he had a period in the second half where he, was completely unstoppable. Carolina couldn't do anything to keep in front of him. And so, Michigan, I think, is going to throw different looks at him. Mara's length is something that he hasn't seen so far this year. So it'll be interesting to see if he does get in the low block, are some of the moves that he's been so effective with this year, how will they translate against that kind of length? Because he has struggled when Cameron Boozer has struggled this year. There haven't been many moments.
Yeah.
It's usually come against teams. You think back to Texas in the opener, against teams that have real length like that. Morez Johnson is incredibly physical. He's going to try and put his body through Cam Boozer. How does he respond to that? And then on the flip side, when Ade Mara is coming down, can Cameron Boozer, be willing to be all over the place? Can he defend on the perimeter? Can he defend on the low block? Can he keep up with some of the two-man big-to-big actions that Michigan likes to do so well? So it's going to be a fascinating chess match between Jon Scheyer and Dusty May. I seriously, not just the 1 versus 3 nature of this game, but the actual strategy involved is going to be so fascinating.
Yeah. Let me be the one to say it then. I won't make you. Can these guys on both sides defend without fouling and not make officials that big of an impact in a game like this, particularly for Duke, as we've seen recently, where front court depth is something that many people want to question, and foul trouble, let's call it like we said, that all of a sudden becomes a big deal if you find yourself in that position.
When teams, look at North Carolina, you look at Texas, not Texas Tech to some extent, when Michigan State, when teams have given Duke trouble, it's been by getting Duke's bigs in foul trouble. That's the fact of the matter. Duke's front court is one of the best in the country. It's not tremendously deep. It's really a three-man rotation. And so I do think that Michigan
still takes 5 fouls to foul out. Exactly. That hasn't changed.
So I think Michigan is probably going to go straight at them. I would say, I think Michigan has the depth advantage over Duke, which is not something that you say very often. Jon Scheyer, traditionally has some of the deeper teams in the country. But yeah, that's something that Duke is going to have to be conscientious of. And it's also going to require people like Adame Sarr to be able to defend someone like a Yaxel Lendenborg at times. It's going to take Nick Khamenei being able to get in there and mix it up with some of these forwards. You're going to have to see guys on the way. Isaiah Evans is probably going to have opportunities where he's being asked to guard someone like a Lendenborg. So it's going to be on those guys to help insulate Duke's front court a little bit and make sure that those guys aren't left on an island just being battering rams for Michigan's front court.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking into the big events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to all the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races that are decided by fractions of a second or by mere inches. Popular and niche sports become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 College. In the other big college basketball game of the day tomorrow, number 2 Houston meets up with number 4 Arizona in another potential championship preview. Our Locked On hosts with both teams got together for a crossover episode previewing the matchup.
There is one star missing this weekend. That does not mean it's a nice star-studded affair. I don't mean to bring up resumes or anything like that, but you have looked at draft big board stuff before. You've recently put out a big board. You said, I believe in a pre-pod kind of conversation, there's several of these guys, I think 4 of these guys make your big board here. So I'll throw it to you, having done some research. What's the most intriguing matchup this weekend or person this weekend to watch for the NBA draft prospects?
Yeah, I think Kingston Flemings is the headliner. Many have him in the top 5. I think he's got a chance to be the best point guard, and you know him very well. But I think Braden Burries has a clear-cut case to be a lottery guy as well. So I think there's 2 lottery guards on the floor, and there could have been a chance for a power forward on power forward, Chris Sinak and Koa Pete, both of whom I have in my lottery as well. So on these rosters, I have 4 lottery picks. I have Kingston Flemings, Braden Burries, Chris Sinak, Koa Pete, all in my top 14. And I really wish Koa could play. Maybe we get this matchup in a couple weeks in Kansas City, and we can run this back and discuss this. But I got 4 in my lottery and a couple more that I think are fringe first-rounders.
So you mentioned Sinak and Koa and Burries and Kingston. I don't mean to be like the homer here. Does Houston get drafted earlier at both of those spots to you? Is Houston kind of got an edge as far as pro prospect? Obviously, it's not the exact same thing as saying a present tense, the game is this weekend kind of conversation either, but you're pretty high on both of those Cougars.
Yeah, I do have both Cougars higher than both Wildcats. I have Kingston Flemings number 6 on my board, and many would say that's low. I don't mean that as a slight on Kingston Flemings at all. It's number 6 in a very good draft. I think Michael Brown has more potential in terms of being like this superhuman guy, and he's from Louisville. I don't mean to digress, but I'm a guy who believes very, very highly in potential. Like if you're drafting at the top of a draft, it means you're really bad in most cases, and therefore you need the chance for a transcendent, franchise-changing talent. That's what like my draft core philosophy is. I think Michael Brown may have a touch more than Kingston Flemings. I think Kingston Flemings has more than Braden Burries. And I think Chris Sinak probably, if he pans out, like I think he's less surefire than Koa Pete, but I think he has a higher potential than Koa Pete as well. So that's going to get me in trouble. But on my board, I have Kingston Flemings at 6. I've got Braden Burries at 7, and I'm very high on Braden Burries. And I've got Chris Sinak at 10, and I got Koa Pete at 11, I believe. So it's very, very close. Maybe Koa's at 12. I wouldn't be surprised if these switch in the future. But right now I've got Houston slightly ahead in that individual versus individual. And, they wouldn't not even – I doubt they guard each other. I don't think Braden guards Kingston. I don't think Kingston guards Braden. And Koa's not playing. But it is very fun to have a floor with probably 6 guys that are in the NBA next year.
Well, and I want to talk about the other guys too. So I don't mean to like sit on the lottery and only the lottery for too long. I don't think Kingston and Braden Burries guard each other a whole lot either. Maybe on a switch here or there, like obviously, but nothing too crazy. Is there anything, whether it's Kingston moving up into your top 5 or anything from Braden Burries that could move him back, that you could see happening this weekend that would offer some movement? Is a star versus star matchup have any weight as you see it?
Absolutely. I mean, these are 2 of the best 4 teams in the country. And it's so awesome that the best 4 teams in the country play against one another in some form this weekend with Duke and Michigan, Houston, Arizona. I think if either Kingston or Burries has a standout performance, efficient, 20-plus points, again, in what I assume will be a low-scoring game, and they shine brightly, I think it moves the needle. Like I especially believe that for Braden Burries, because Burries is seen as like this fringe lottery guy by the mainstream. I've seen every one of his games, and I really believe in what he's got. And Fran Fraschillo kind of started this comparison. To me, ever since Fran said it, I can't get the Devin Booker comp out of my head. Smooth, shoots the ball, scores from 3 levels, puts great rim pressure on, and he's got it all. And if he's able to score 20-plus on good efficiency and will Arizona to a win or a very close game, and it all of a sudden you're like, wow, like that guy's different. Kingston's had a few of those performances, so I don't think he moves the needle as much because he's had a few. Like against Iowa State, I think you'd still be like, okay, Kingston Flemings was the best player on the court. I think he had one against Texas Tech. Ironically, they lost both those games that I came up with. I think Kingston's is more, if he continues to do so, does he perpetuate himself into the top 4? Because I think widely he's 5 or 6, which is where I've got him. So I think Kingston can move up 1 spot. I think Burries can move up like 7, according to where most people have him.
And looking at the rest of the first round and beyond, frankly, guys that have a big impact in this game, whether it's Korchenkov there at Arizona, Emmanuel Sharp at Houston. Look, I don't think Sharp is projected as a first-round draft pick. So I mean, and I think you mentioned Korchenkov. I think at one point, said you personally take him there, right?
I would. I don't think anyone else is on board, but I would.
No, I shouldn't say he's not like a media favorite or anything like that yet. Do you think there's a chance that, if we look back in April and they're talking about second-round draft pick Emmanuel Sharp, they're talking about this performance in Arizona, is this going to be one of those kinds of games where they saw good versus good and it worked and it showed up and he played on the floor with other pros and fit in and did well?
Absolutely. I sincerely believe in this game that Houston's entire backcourt will be in the NBA next year. I don't think Uzan or Sharp are picked in the first round. But, like, if you look at Florida's backcourt last year, Walter Clayton went 18, and then Will Richard and Elijah Martin. Excuse me, did I say Houston? I meant Florida. Florida's backcourt, those guys are all in the pros playing significant minutes. I feel very similarly about Houston's backcourt. I think your standout's Kingston Flemings. He's the Walter Clayton of this equation. And then you have two guys that are junkyard dogs, bona fide beasts. And they play really, really hard. And they do things, and they have enough size that NBA scouts covet. And I think they're second-round picks and will play in the NBA. On Arizona's side, I'm a Karchenkov guy. I really think he's the next best prospect on Arizona behind Burries and Pete. And I think Mo Krivas, I hope he comes back to Arizona selfishly, but I would take him in the second round. 7'2", runs like a deer, blocks everything, alters even more. I think that's a pro. And Arizona doesn't have Dwayne Aristode in this one, but many people in the mock draft community had Dwayne Aristode as a first rounder prior to the season, coming off a foot injury from Netherlands. He came in, missed his whole last year. You can see the flashes. I don't think he goes to the draft. He hasn't played enough, but like on rosters, like if you add all these rosters together, I think there's 8 pros,
which is crazy, right? One college basketball game this weekend, rosters with 8 pros, without really like doing a whole lot of pushing and shoving. Like you're not like forcing any of that to happen. It might not, but like you're not like saying like, oh, well, and then maybe this guy kind of sort of gets a shot.
I didn't even mention Jaden Bradley. Like I think Jaden Bradley's a pro too. Like I think there's 8 guys that will play NBA games in this game. And I'd be more surprised if it's under 8 than if it's over 8, honestly.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking into the big events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to all the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races that are decided by fractions of a second or by mere inches. Popular and niche sports become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 College. In a third-ranked game coming Saturday, BYU has a chance to pick up a quad 1 win over Iowa State before the number 23 Cougars take on the number 6 Cyclones. Jake Hatch has the preview on Locked On Cougars.
BYU and the Iowa State Cyclones are set to square off tomorrow night at the Marriott Center. Another late-night game at the MC, 8:30 p.m. tip-off as the Cyclones come to town, and BYU is getting short on remaining opportunities to tally what has been kind of eluding them when it comes to their NCAA tournament resume, and that is a signature win, just a true game that you look at and say, you know what, that's the win that is going to make or break BYU's case when it comes to going in front of the selection committee. If you missed it yesterday, it came out of the mock selection committee. They bring a bunch of media members from all over the country together to go through what the NCAA tournament selection committee experiences. And it came out that BYU currently, despite everything that's gone on, they considered all circumstances, the Richie Saunders injuries, the other injuries BYU's endured, the fact that they haven't been necessarily as dominant and as good as some people thought they were. We all thought they were going into the season. BYU right now is still slated as a 6 seed. That shows you that any of you who have got concerns that BYU, should they lose out, could find themselves on the bubble, looking on the outside, being on the outside looking in when it comes to March Madness, I don't think that's going to be the case. And I also don't think that BYU is going to lose out. They still have games remaining against the likes of UCF coming up next week. They go to West Virginia and to Cincinnati. Those are not murderer's row. Yes, there are the games I mentioned against Iowa State tomorrow night, and then you finish up their senior night showdown against Texas Tech in the Marriott Center. But BYU is not out of the tournament field by any stretch of the imagination. And quite literally, I don't think even if they lost out, BYU is going to find themselves on the outside of the NCAA tournament. Speaking of coming up next month, that's just personal opinion on the matter and looking at the metrics as they bear out. But the bigger point to be made here is BYU has a big time opportunity tomorrow night against Iowa State. Yes, they are at a significant talent disadvantage right now with the number of injuries, most particularly losing a guy like Richie Saunders. That is an absolute just crowbar to the knee, figuratively, of the BYU basketball program, but they still have got guys and they've still got a competitive spirit. I refuse to say that BYU is going to fall off the wagon when it comes to the season after losing Richie, because the way they performed against Arizona on the road in Tucson the other night showed me that there's still I call it want to. There's a lot of just want to in this basketball team right now. And yes, there are significant issues with this BYU basketball team, particularly on defense. That is where it really feels like BYU will make or break this stretch run for themselves, is their ability to lock up on defense. Any of you, and I saw it on social media, et cetera, saying that Kevin Young is overrated as a coach. Well, okay, here's the thing. He's not overrated. He's put together two of the most prolific, if you look at offensive metrics and efficiency numbers, that BYU basketball quite literally has ever had in his first 2 seasons at BYU. While the offense is not the problem for BYU, it's got to be on the defensive end. They've got to be able to lock down, and that's going to require, like I said, that want to from this BYU basketball squad. And why I am of the opinion that tomorrow night against Iowa State, the Cyclones could be ripe for the picking, because in Big 12 play on the road so far this year, Iowa State ranked 6th in the country. They're 3-3 in Big 12 road games. And we have talked often about the fact that any road win you can pick up in Big 12 play is pretty significant, especially the likes of coming to Provo and playing in the Marriott Center. They like to call their home floor out there in Ames Hilton Magic. Well, guess what? The Marriott Magic that BYU's got in Provo, it's downright elite. The Rock, everything that BYU fans bring to the table and what they do for the environment there, it is going to be an advantage for BYU in this game against Iowa State. I'm not saying I'm expecting BYU to roll over the Cyclones, but I am expecting them to fight tooth and nail and make this a very, very difficult proposition to pick up a road win for the Cyclones. They're not imminently unbeatable, speaking of the Iowa State, because I look at their roster. They have had better rosters, honestly, in the past, speaking of Iowa State. Momcilovic, I think I've got that pronunciation right, is their leading scorer at 18 points a game. Joshua Jefferson, who I think is actually, in my opinion, their best player. He's averaging 16.5 and 7.5, speaking of points and rebounds. And then Taman Lipsey, who has been a phenomenal player. He's averaging 13 points per game. And those are kind of their big three, speaking of Iowa State. But I think that this is a game that if BYU brings the type of effort they've brought, like I said, Wednesday night against Arizona, and they do have that home crowd behind them, I think this is that game that BYU could win and finally have that elusive signature win, that when it comes finally for the real NCAA tournament selection committee to say, okay, let's look at BYU here. Yes, they lost Richie Saunders. Yes, they've been decimated due to injury by and large to their lineup. Their bench is a mess, and they've got a lot of metrics that both work and go against them. But you look at their body of work. Excuse me. Still dealing with the after effects of a cold, if you guys can't tell my voice. But the thing is, you pick up that win over Iowa State, and it's inarguable that BYU is going to find itself a single-digit seed and could actually be a better seed than many of us expect. Because as I said, that mock selection committee, I didn't expect BYU to be a 6 seed, but they were, and they were lined up for the second round showdown in a matchup with Gonzaga, who was a 3 seed. Oh, the memories. Oh, the matchup that could be. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that BYU still very well could finish the season with a flourish. I refuse to say that they're done, they're cooked, like some people want to say they are on social media, because I saw the heart, the desire, everything that you want to see from a team in that game against Arizona, when easily it could have gone the other way, where they could have just mailed it and said, yeah, the season is over. So long as they bring that same type of intensity, you as Cougar fans go and impact that game as best you can, cheering on your team in the Marriott Center. Yeah, that Marriott Magic, it could rival Hilton Magic in terms of the opportunity for BYU to notch a big win over the Iowa State Cyclones. And we'll see how it all plays out tomorrow night under the lights in the Marriott Center.
That's all for the Big 3 and 30 college. If you follow pro basketball or football, the Big 3 and 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and NFL going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 and 30 NBA or the Big 3 and 30 NFL wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 and 30 college.